Welcome to International Career Journey Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sherrie Lee, career coach for international professionals. And welcome. I'm really pleased to have with me today Sumati Sharma. She's a senior international admissions officer working at a university in New Zealand. Sumati's originally from India, and she spent her time studying in New Zealand and now is working here. But I'll hand the mic over to Sumati for her to introduce herself. Sumati, welcome.
Thank you, Sherrie. Appreciate the opportunity. Just to briefly say, I arrived in New Zealand as an experienced educational professional, and stepping into being a student again was, I think, quite brave, but also did make me excited, a little bit nervous. And the professional journey after being an international student was an experience in itself, challenging myself of learning, unlearning, and those 5 to 6 years, I would say, have made me a person that I'm very proud of today, of making that decision to challenge myself, being a student after being a professional in a different country altogether.
Thanks, Sumati. And I've many friends who are like you, and actually, I am also similar in that regard, having built a profession in Singapore and then coming to New Zealand to study. What was it that prompted you to leave your professional life behind and start afresh in a different country?
Well, thank you. Quite a good question, I think. Education has been where my heart lies, and I navigated to different roles in education. And I reached a standpoint where I was like, this is getting really very comfortable. I need something more. And in the first instance, when I shared it with my family, I was really questioned, are you okay? Because that's what we aim for, being comfortable. I'm like, but it's also getting a little boring for me because it's like the usual. I'm very okay with what I've been doing, and I wanted something new to explore and challenge myself. And I'm very grateful I had a supportive family. Like, if that's what you want to do, go for it. While I made that decision, I can say there were moments when I was like, did I really need to sign up for this? Because there was the nervousness. There was absolutely moments of doubt, as in like the uncertainties, being the visa, rules, working around the visa rules, or how it would turn out to be. Academic expectations, I think, and it's a different ball game when you've been a professional for a while and then you step back being a student and in an absolutely different country and setting. But I think that's what I was wanting. So it would take a couple of moments and I was like, well, this is what I wanted. So here I am.
Can you tell us a little bit about your last job in India and what you chose to study in New Zealand?
Yeah. So before I came to New Zealand, I was a science teacher back in India, and it was all perfectly fine. I'm a registered teacher back in India. I'm glad I did get that registration here as well. So that education link still stays with me. The teaching was interesting. The part that really interested me were students, the new batch of students that came in. But I wanted to bring in more kind of insight and energy into how teaching or education can be shaped. So more into curriculum and how different is it in different countries, basically. Because when we have that limited view, we kind of feel this is all that is there. And I do hope that sometime down the line in future, I can bring that perspective back when I head home.
So did you study teaching in New Zealand?
Yes, I studied not exactly the teaching, but education, international education.
And what was one key difference you noticed between education in India and education in New Zealand?
I'll be very brief on that. I think just the setting of the classroom, the academic expectations, it was like a reminder to me that this is a whole new ball game. Being an international student, I've done pretty well in my academics back in India. I was like, I have it all. I was all pumped up. I will do it. It'll be fine. And there were moments where, like, oh, I need to learn the rules of how the game is played here. It was absolutely different. And that's where I think the university support system matters. It would have been helpful had I known that a little beforehand, because it took me a while to navigate that there is a support system in place. Even how we could, back in India, respect and obedience kind of worked together. There is a discipline in the classroom, be it postgrad or graduate. But here it's a far more relaxed setting, I feel, which was a difference I had to navigate.
What was one thing you were thinking about as you were studying? For example, were you expecting to land a job after graduation, or were you thinking about going to other countries?
In the first instance, I just seeing the differences in the way the academic expectations were. My goal was to get good grades because that's back home. That's how I operated. And I was like, I think after a couple of months, I realized that this is not going to be my way towards a professional journey here. I need to really look into stuff beyond my grades. And that's when I started reaching out and looking for, services or people who could guide me in the right direction.
So, Sumati, while you were studying, what were you thinking in terms of jobs? Were you expecting to land a job straight after your graduation?
Thank you for the question, Sherrie. I was thinking of not exactly a job, but ways where I could utilize or bring back the skills that I have learned. And initially, it was maybe going back home and bringing whatever I've learned here and putting that into practice. It was only by the end of my study that I realized the best way would be to land a job here, gain more experience, and then be better prepared to take it back home and actually blend it and see how I can utilize that in a setting, because that was one of the reasons that motivated me to take that decision to actually move out and study out of my country.
Did those plans come to pass?
Kind of, yes. I'm still learning in education. The teaching wise, I have taken back a couple of things because my family does have I do have like a channel where I can bring back my ideas and share it with them. So that makes me feel good that it's being put into practice wherever it is appropriate and how appropriate. But in the long term, I think I'm yet to reach there where I can bring it in a far more effective way while I'm gaining all that and enriching myself working here at the moment.
So it's so nice to hear how you wanted to take your new learnings and bring it back home and take what you know from home and to put it in a new context in New Zealand. Tell us a little bit about how you navigated your professional journey or job search to where you are today working at the university.
Thanks for the question, Sherrie. I think, like I just shared in my earlier question, midway through my study, I realized that grades are not the way towards a professional journey here. Back in India, your grades is what that mattered the most. Here, I realized that, and that's when I started reaching out through LinkedIn, through services at my university. And that was very helpful because I kind of started understanding how different it was to get a job here. And I didn't limit myself to familiar zones. I think I just wanted to gather info as much as I could for me to then see how I could use that in education. Also, because I came from a very, I would say, limited kind of work experience. Being a teacher, I had to look at transferable skills until I actually was able to be a teacher here. So I had to have a plan A and a plan B. So I explored reaching out to, I think, very few people in the education sector, but more in the other sectors, just to understand how it works. And I was amazed how LinkedIn messages did work.
Can you share with us an example of how you successfully use LinkedIn to get information or meet someone?
Yeah, I did. It was not something which came very comfortably to me. Reaching on LinkedIn back in India and my professional journey, it's more formal compared to New Zealand. So I gave it a try first time, and I was really surprised pleasantly with how such a warm message that I received. They were like, "Oh yeah, why not? What are you looking for?" So when I met that person, and within a week, I think we had like a 30 minutes meeting, which I thought was a very big, um, I really appreciated those 30 minutes for someone they didn't know. And I was before I went for the meeting, I was very clear what I was expecting. And I was like, I need help in understanding how this setting works, and appreciate if you could help me, else I would just, so that the person who is giving me that time is also aware how best they can help me, because I'm asking for someone's 30 minutes. And that kind of set the ball rolling. Uh, they were very honest, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, and the first individual I met had before worked with certain migrants. And he told me one thing. He's like, the biggest thing I think for you would be to understand and adapt to the work culture here. Continue your LinkedIn messages and networking if it works, but don't hesitate to reach out for coffee catch ups." Which was very new to me. By then, I had already declined a couple of coffee catch ups at my university because it meant very different back in my home country. So that was a learning.
Well, tell us a bit more about what it means to have coffee in India and what does it
Uh,
mean to have coffee in New Zealand?
Coffee in India would be anything other than work. So it would not be the most appropriate thing for me to ask for coffee in a workplace with related. So it's everything other than work related most often. Or it could be the closest I could think of in corporates is when you're really comfortable and you're just asking a teammate or colleague more on a friendly note for a break. Here, coffee catch ups, I feel everything happens over coffee. It's more of an informal understanding of you as a professional. Um, and it could be sharing knowledge, experiences, engaging how we could, if not immediately in the future, kind of had that shared knowledge or opportunities. And I think it's a great way. It seemed very awkward initially to me, and then I went back to those two individuals who reached out to me for a coffee catch up before I understood what it meant. And that was a huge, I think, cultural work culture learning for me and unlearning, and I got a little more comfortable with it. And I had to tell them why I declined those, because it might have come across very rude to them. And then when I shared it, they did acknowledge, "Oh, thanks for reaching, because we didn't understand why you declined it in the first place." Yeah.
That's so good to hear. And coffee catch ups are something I also learned that it was an informal setting where people can speak freely without necessarily having to promise you anything. And
Yeah.
at least one thing I learned was don't ask for a job, but just
Oh, yeah.
have a chat and listen and learn. I'm just really curious, did one coffee catch up lead you to the current job that you're doing today?
Um, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate. I think by the time I got comfortable with coffee catch ups, I had landed into, I was still learning and adapting. It's easier said, but I've had a professional life back in India, so I'm wired a certain way. I had to really unlearn quite a lot of things. Um, and I would go for these coffee catch ups, but like, I think I had to open up and warm up a bit more at that stage. I was very fortunate that I landed my first job at one of the government sectors for a bit, without any of those. Uh, and then when I came back at uni, now I understand. And actually, this place, my current workplace, has given me the opportunity to understand more of it, because I was fortunate to get into the professional sector quite quick after being an international student. But for any incoming or current international students, I would say coffee catch ups are the thing. Go for it. But like Sherrie said, don't go there with an expectation for a job. It's just to go, absorb, share, and come back.
Well, perhaps we can say that the coffee chats indirectly did help you get your first job by understanding more about New Zealand workplace norms, how to
Oh,
behave, and how to
oh yes.
respond to interviewers.
Yeah, I do agree with that, Sherry. Yeah, I just had a couple of them, but they were so very helpful. Even being directed to the right direction, into the right place to go to for small little things. And I was just navigating my teacher's registration at that moment. And they did share one thing which I think was very valuable and is that volunteer as much as you can. And that volunteering really opened up doors for me to learn even more. You're right. Coffee ketchup state kind of indirectly lead me there.
And
Yeah.
could you share one of your volunteering experiences?
Um, so back in India, I was a teacher and I was nervous about teaching here from the classroom setting I saw as an international student. And volunteering kind of gave me that opportunity to understand. So I volunteered as a teacher and a tutor with an Indian group and a non-native Indian group to just see how comfortable I am, and that helped me decide as to whether I really want to get into teaching right away in a classroom or just tutor. Um, Else, I wouldn't have had that chance, and I would have maybe landed up into something which I was not most comfortable with at that moment, because the classroom teaching is absolutely different back home and here.
Tell us a little bit about your transition from being a classroom teacher to working, well, not in a classroom, but in an office setting, but still working within education.
Yeah. Before a teacher, I have done in education, but a non-classroom role. So I was into recruiting. So it kind of did help me. But the work culture is absolutely, I mean, it did catch me unaware a little bit initially because I had to adapt and a lot of unlearning. I was too very formal. Like back in India, it's a formal setting, very direct. New Zealand is far more relaxed, humor. There's not much of hierarchy. In India, there's very hierarchical. And here I had to unlearn that you don't have to always be in a formal state of mind. Which I think, and also being patient with myself while I was navigating the learning and unlearning as well, because certain things to expect myself to just switch is unfair as well. So just being myself kind of helped, where I was being mindful, trying, absorbing, and navigating, while also not losing it out and pressurizing myself that I have to. And I still think the journey is on, because still the majority of years have been back in my home country than I am in New Zealand, and which I think needs to be accepted, to just be more comfortable with what I'm doing. Does that answer the question, Sherry?
Absolutely. And on that note, if someone were to ask you, where are you from? How would you answer that?
I'm pretty comfortable with that question, because I would still say I'm from India, working here, and this I take away from one of the Indian philosophy, which says something as Matrabhoomi and Karmabhoomi. So Matrabhoomi is your birthplace, and Karmabhoomi is where you're working. And when you give your 100%, where I'm working with integrity, professionalism, that in turn makes the birthplace feel proud. So I will always be an Indian, but that also teaches me that where I'm working, my karma bhumi needs to be respected, and I'm 100% professional. My current setting is New Zealand, will be New Zealand. Does that resonate?
It's so beautiful. Just hearing you speak and gave me goosebumps about your birthplace and where you currently are, where the places you are interconnected. You can't split them up.
I also see this, if I may add, it reminds me as a child, my parents also migrated within India. India is pretty diverse and massive. So we migrated from the extreme north to the extreme south. And I remember my father always saying that, a tree, when you grow, it has to flourish and grow, the roots need to go deeper. And I see that even I can kind of relate that as a migrant here, I need to flourish in New Zealand, but it also means having my roots strong to sustain. So, birthplace, India, my workplace, where I have to and I will, is New Zealand. That's how I see myself.
Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? Where would home be for you?
I love that question. It kind of brings goosebumps because as an international student, while I was navigating and I had my husband and my child back in India, I kept telling, and I was really looking forward to, like that question, where is home? Doesn't feel like home. And when they arrived, I remember at the harbor, I told him it almost feels like home now because I have my family here. Now, it's been a couple of years, and when I visited back home, it really made me question where is home. And I kind of see that this is home, but my birthplace is more like when you visit your grandparents, which is always your home, your safe space where you belong. And this will gradually get there. But at this stage, I would say this is home, but that's a special home, if that answers kind of.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like home has different meanings, and your
Yeah.
birthplace as home has a extra special meaning.
Yeah. And it's also part of your identity, isn't it, Sherry? Like, if I have to say, like, to be true to myself, that I'm absolutely, this is home, this is where I am, it does feel that. And I really appreciate that New Zealand has made me feel that. But I can't lie to myself that home is also where I have been so far, where it is part of my identity and who made me comfortable to be here. So I can't take that off. So this is home, but India is a special home. It could be different for my children, for sure. For them, this would be home, possibly the special home when they visit. So it's very subjective. Beautiful question. Thank you.
Let's turn now to how you see yourself as a professional. As you've mentioned, coming here as an international student, being here as a migrant, and now working in the international education space. That must feel really special. How do you view your work, and how do your experiences contribute to that?
Yeah, as an international student, it was a mix, like I shared, of challenges, uncertainty, but also the excitement. And I think it taught me a lot of resilience and making me aware how the small little kindness, moments of clarity mattered. And that has shaped who I am and how I work today. And I bring that perspective to my work every day. It feels like I've come a full circle, uh, and it just makes me have my responsibilities, do a little more of with a little more of kindness, fairness, empathy, and also bringing that perspective into processes and making decisions that impact students, because stakes are very high for students and families when they make that decision. And I think that's kind of the emotion that I bring to my work every day.
Is there something you would like to be in 5 years' time in terms of a new role or a new challenge? What does it look like for you?
Um, I definitely, I can't put a title to it, but I see myself being able to contribute in a larger, more um, way towards shaping education. How it will shape up is different, but I would like it to be more towards international students, as in their experiences, how it comes to them, and sometimes when your role doesn't permit, there are opportunities where you kind of like what you're doing right now in a podcast. It kind of brings that joy that this would be helpful for some international student listening to it, right? Um, Professionally, I see myself that I would like to share it and maybe bring it into processes where I can contribute in a much larger way, and in leadership roles where those decisions really, those perspectives matter in making those decisions. Does that answer, Sherrie?
Always, Sumati, you always answer the question. And it's amazing how you have a vision for yourself and wanting to do more to support that. As you said, it's a very important decision for international students and their families to make. And I can't wait to see you do that. Maybe not in 5 years' time, perhaps even sooner than that, when you're contributing to the systems. And yeah, I can absolutely see you in a leadership position. And I'm excited for you.
Oh, thank you.
And as we think about settling in New Zealand or having a home in India, is there anything that makes you feel sort of in transition or unsettled? Where do you see yourself living in between cultures?
Oh, yes. The transition moments do hit in. In a professional setting, not that much, because I've kind of adapted. If not adapted, you're aware that this is how it's going to feel, and you're still getting there, being yourself, but also being respectful, adapting to that culture. But apart from professional life, there are moments when you miss, when I miss that community, when I miss the ambience of how it was back in India for me. I also have a workaround for that. Initially, as a student, the intention was to be more interacting or having my social circle beyond just my comfort, ethnicity or comfort family people. But now, when I miss it, I just reach out to where there are community activities. And it doesn't have to be exactly Indian, but anywhere where you feel like family, you're more social. And over the years, I've had that. Been fortunate I've been able to build those. Going to embassies, I think, is a great place for international students having that connect. The Indian High Commission here is very warm. It feels like home away from home. I have some other friends and families who are not Indian, but just gives me the feeling of being in the same community, which is fine. But that takes a while, so be patient while you're navigating and getting there. But there are moments when you feel like, this is home, but then you do miss home. Yeah.
And I love how you put it, right? It's still a journey. You're still learning. You're still wanting to
Absolutely
figure out what home is. And it's lovely to hear your experiences and how you're navigating that. I love your idea about how, it doesn't have to be strictly Indian,
No.
but, a community or a place or a group of friends or family that makes you feel comfortable.
Absolutely. And I think initially the most families that made me feel home were all non-Indian. And I'm so grateful for that. It was just the feeling. Languages are a great way to communicate, but the emotion, I think, is always stronger. So just being there with them made me feel home. And they will always be a special part of my journey.
Now, as we wrap up our podcast, I've got a few quick questions for you. What is your favorite local food discovery in New Zealand?
Mashed potato and pumpkin soup.
Do you make it yourself?
Now I do, but initially I was like, wow, it's not something I saw very common in India.
Okay. And what is the best piece of advice you've received about establishing an international career?
International career? Be open and prepared for the most unexpected, while trust yourself that it'll all fall in place when you're doing the right thing.
And if you could tell your student self one thing, what would it be?
You've made the bravest decision to come here. You will survive.
Amazing.
You've taken the first step already.
That's fantastic, Sumati. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I really enjoyed hearing your journey. And I still remember what you said about your birthplace and the place where you are, and that these two places enrich each other.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sherrie. It's been wonderful. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Sumati.